Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Thursday, March 25th. It's another beautiful day in God's kingdom, and I hope that you're enjoying the unfolding of spring. It's still very chilly here in Wainwright, but you know what? That's okay. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the importance of peer consultation. What I mean by that is having peers, people that you can talk to, who help you through difficult times, who can consult with you in good times, and just generally kibitz about your faith and your spiritual life and the rest of your life as well. The term peer consultation comes from when I was first ordained. I was a priest in Stratford and Mitchell, Ontario, and I was at the time the only female priest in my area. And the church at the city of Stratford had three Anglican churches. St. James Church was the biggest one. It was sort of the cathedral type church. St. Paul's was the church that was built on the other side of the tracks, and it was very blue collar, wonderful people. But when it was originally built, it was very much up on the hill was St. James with all the doctors and lawyers and Stratford festival folk. And then across the tracks where the factories were was St. Paul's. And then St. Stephen's was built as a mission church of St. Paul's. And I was the rector at St. Stephen's. And Canon Michael Farr, who was our regional dean, was the rector at St. Paul's. And our archdeacon, John Spencer, was the rector at St. James. And there was also an associate priest named Tim Connor, who was an associate at St. James. And he had been a rector in London, and he was currently at the time working on his letters in theology at Trinity College, I believe. He was working on, instead of a PhD, he was working on his theological doctorate, a PhD. I'm not sure what it's called, remember what it's called, but it's a lot harder, I think, than a PhD. It's very specific. He is a brilliant man. But they decided at one point that, you know what, we needed to get together. And since a lot of us sort of took Friday as our day off, Thursday after work, at the end of the day, was our sort of wind down day. And the guys wanted to make sure I was okay. I was single and didn't have any family in the area, and they just wanted to make sure I didn't work too hard and I had what I needed. And they saw themselves as mentors. They could teach me what I didn't know and help me to understand what it was to be a priest. So we would get together Thursday afternoons at the country club, at the Stratford Country Club, Golf and Country Club, because Michael was an avid golfer. I think Tim was as well, and Michael had a membership there, so we could gather in the 19th hole in the clubhouse, and we could sit and talk. And the guys would have a beer, and we'd have these amazing chip nuts. They were peanuts coated in chips. And I can't find them anywhere except hot barbecue. I miss them so much. So if you ever find just regular flavored chip nuts, please let me know where I can find them, because I love them and haven't been able to find them since Stratford. But we would go to the bar, they'd get their beer, and I always had a coffee. I'm not much of a beer drinker, and I was a little bit intimidated by that. I was 27, 28 years old, and they were closer to retirement. And so we would sit and we would have what started out as a beer consultation, we thought probably wasn't appropriate for a bunch of priests. So it's called peer consultation. And while we talked about family and we talked about politics and everything else, they also very subtly wove into our conversation things that had happened to them in their ministries in the early years. And they drew out of me those questions that I had, and they never made fun of me. They never mocked me for asking a stupid question or doing something that they wouldn't have done. They really treated me as their peer. And I think that's something that we really need to hang on to in life, is having peers and peer consultation. In this case, I'm not talking about simply somebody who does the same work as you and you can chat about, at the golf and country club after work, or at the bar, or at the coffee shop. But I'm talking about spiritual peers. We all need people who are going to help us hold ourselves accountable, or hold us accountable for ourselves to our faith. People who are asking us, how is your faith life today? How is your prayer? I've been doing a Revive Lent session study, and the first question, our icebreaker question we're supposed to ask is, how is it with your soul today? And that seems like a really heady, heavy question, like, how is it with your soul? Wow. But really, how is it with your soul? How are you doing? How are you holding up? How are you being held down? In times like this, with this pandemic, it's really tough, especially when we're not supposed to be meeting in coffee shops and meeting with people outside our family bubbles. It's hard to have those conversations. It's hard to know where can we turn, or who can we talk to, or remember that we do need to talk to somebody to ask that question. How is it with your soul? How is your prayer life? Are you praying? Are you finding the energy you need to be able to pray during this pandemic? Because that's not a given. The longer this goes on, the more disheartened we're feeling, the more people get fed up with the rules, the masks, and waiting for their turn for the vaccine, and blah, 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 blah. The more difficult it is to keep our heads above water, I think. And we need to recognize that. And that's why we need so much the need for peers, the need for somebody that we can reach out to and say, help me out. I'm spiritually drowning here. I'll help you. How can I pray for you? Can I pray with you? What can I do to help you? How can I help you, encourage you when you feel discouraged? At the same time, sometimes when things are better, and I always feel this way after Easter, after a good long Lent, after Easter I sort of get buoyant and feel much better. We'll see what happens this year with the pandemic still happening. But sometimes we actually need someone to anchor us, that we're kind of like a helium-filled balloon, that we get so excited, we get so overwhelmed with all that is good in our lives, and the feeling of Christ's presence, that we're like a balloon that starts to float away, and we run the risk of getting lost in all this goodness and forgetting that it's really there in the excitement. We're not to worship the excitement, we are to worship God. And so I think sometimes it's good for us to have those peers who will grab the strings of our balloon and hold us down, let us float up there and enjoy it, but really be anchored, have an opportunity to be anchored. And when we can do that for one another, then we're doing really well. So I encourage you to find someone with whom you can have a peer consultation, or you might even want to have a beer consultation, but someone who is going to encourage you, someone who's going to invite you to be honest about your faith. Sorry, Rob's home and it just came in the door. Somebody's going to encourage you to be honest with yourself about your faith and ask you to be honest with them. When we have these kinds of spiritual friendships, we'll be in good shape. So have a great day. God bless you. And I will see you again tomorrow for Church at Home.